Excuse me, only detectives are allowed on the crime scene. Oh, you're here for a tour. Oh, I completely forgot. Yes, sorry. I'm Detective Harry, and I will be your tour guide for today. So I am going to be hosting the Crimes and Passion Tour, the Not So Friendly Manitoba Tour. We're going to be taking you around the Exchange District and showing you some of the most notorious crimes that have happened in the history of Manitoba. So come on with me and we'll take you on this tour. Hello everyone. I just wanted to give a friendly reminder before we start this tour that this tour is not for the faint of heart, as it has some gruesome tales of the most notorious killers and villains in all of Canadian history. So before we get going today, I just wanted to remind you that it's okay to take a step away and not participate in today's tour. Thank you. I, Detective Harry, will be taking you through time and sharing with you some of the most horrific and violent crimes that have happened in the history of the Manitoban Exchange District. Okay, so we've just arrived at our first stop. This is the old Salvation Army that was on the corner of Rupert and King Street back in 1896. So the day was January 10th, 1896. And this was the day when a man named John Nankerville decided to sneak his way into an electric railway where there was currently an officer still working. John decided to sneak into the station and put his gun right to the man's head. At that point, the man, in disbelief, moved his head quickly to the left when John had pulled the trigger and actually had missed. In panic, John ran out of the building, but was luckily undetected. John then went and looked for a place to hide, and the first person that came to his mind was his old cellmate William Smith. Him and William Smith had gotten in some trouble back in the day, but had been long friends. And after about a month of him being at their place, they had actually decided to plan another heist. So on February 4th, 1896, the two decided to meet at the Salvation Army on Rupert and King Street. From that point, they decided to walk to another bank where they would try and attempt a robbery. As the two were walking towards the bank, John started getting second thoughts and was getting paranoid about the fact that he told William about all the details of the robbery that had happened just the month before. So in the spur of the moment, John decided to take out his gun, point it at William just like that, and shoot him right in the ear. William fell to the floor, and then John decided to go and finish him off, where he once again shot him 2 more times. John was pretty sure that William was dead, so he decided to walk away from the scene. After being left for dead, somehow William Smith miraculously gained consciousness and climbed his way out of the riverbank where he had been left to die. He had gotten the attention of some local residents who called the detective that actually came and saved his life. Unlucky for John Nankerville, though, he was actually charged with attempted murder, and as well he was charged for the robbery he had committed a month ago. William Smith went to fully recover and ended up actually seeing justice served. Warning: the following scene may contain violence, as it is a reenactment of what had happened between William Smith and John Nankerville. Alright, we're going to head to our next stop, which is going to be the Old Winnipeg Police Station. Alright. So the year is 1913, and we've just arrived at the Winnipeg Police Station on Rupert Street. So this is going to be the story of Bloody Jack Kravchenko. But before we get started, I wanted to ask a quick multiple choice question. So what age do you think Jack was when he committed his first crime? A, 11, B, 15, C, 18, D, 6 years old. Alright, and the answer is B, 15 years old. Crazy. He was arrested for his first crime for stealing a bicycle. Bloody Jack Kravchenko had a history of criminal activity. From the age of 15 years old, he stole his first bike, to then later becoming one of the most notorious bank robbers in the history of Canada. On the day of December 13, 1913, however, Jack would rob his last bank. He robbed the Bank of Montreal in Plum Coulee at gunpoint and killed the manager with a gunshot to the head. After quickly escaping, the charming Jack would go to a nearby boarding school where he'd pretend to be a surgeon. This ended up sparking one of the biggest manhunts in Manitoban history. There was a $1,000 reward put out for Jack at the time, and the equivalent to today's money, that would be about $25,000. He was then discovered about roughly 2 days later and thrown in the same prison station we're standing in front of currently. This wasn't the end of Jack, though. He managed to escape the prison cell by getting a hold of a gun from one of the police there, and actually held them at gunpoint and put them in a closet. He then escaped by using a clothesline to climb out of a 30-foot window, where he actually ended up falling and breaking his back and some of his legs and ankles. He somehow managed to escape still and hid for about a week, where he would eventually be caught. He ended up facing life in prison and actually was executed for some of his horrendous crimes he had done in his past. Justice was eventually served. Here's a photo of Jack's last mugshot after he was caught from escaping prison. He was a very good-looking man and also very charming as well, and this is one of his tools he used to manipulate people and often get what he wanted. Alright, we're next going to head to the Royal Albert Hotel, to the exact room where Sidney Terhuis had murdered Robin Green. Follow me this way. The day was July 1st, 2003, when Sidney Terhuis was sitting at the hotel bar. A man named Robin Green had approached him, asking him if he wanted to buy some jewelry he had just stolen, but Sidney had politely declined. They rather had a beer together, and after much conversation they ended up hitting it off. The two then snuck off to room 309 where Robin had been staying. They partook in a bunch of alcohol, prescription drugs, and crack cocaine, where they both ended up blacking out. But then when Sidney woke up in the morning, he was shocked to see that Robin Green had been dead. He had absolutely zero recollection of what had happened that night, and in panic he ran to the nearest person and told them what had happened. He was quickly arrested and taken to jail. Although Sidney was under the influence and had no recollection of what had happened that night, he was still sentenced to 25 years in prison with no chance of parole. He still is in prison in Saskatchewan currently. Here's a photo of Sidney Terhuis. Although he may look like an innocent man, behind the scenes he's actually a very gruesome, dark fellow. Alright, you can follow me this way to our last stop on the tour. Alright, so we've just arrived at the 1919 strike. As you can hear behind me, it's quite loud with all these angry protesters. We want our jobs back. We want our jobs back. We want our jobs back. The year was 1919, and the World War I had just ended. It was a tough time for lots of trade workers in Manitoba, as they were making very low wages and the working conditions were very poor. Many soldiers coming back from war were unable to get their jobs back, and as well social tensions were really high in all of Winnipeg. On May 15th, 1919, most workers decided to walk out on the job that day and hit the streets to strike. After that, several strikes were put on after that, but then one day on June 21st, 1919, Bloody Saturday had happened. Bloody Saturday was when over 30,000 workers decided to hit the streets to protest. But then the Northwestern RCMP decided to come to the scene, and they started firing rounds of bullets into the crowd, injuring dozens and killing 2 people. Bloody Saturday would be known as the largest general strike in Canadian history, and as well the start of a social justice reform. Unlike the rest of the stories earlier, this crime was not committed by one individual, but rather the Government of Canada. This was an important moment in history for Manitoba, and as well all of Canada, in its social justice reform. Although we are now known as Friendly Manitoba, it's important to never forget about our dark history and past that has made Manitoba what it is today. So I encourage all of you, if you have a chance, to go visit the Winnipeg Police Museum, where there's plenty of stories and history of crimes that have happened through Manitoban history. So thank you so much for joining my tour today. It was a pleasure having you all come along, and I hope you learned a thing or two about Manitoba's dark history. Thanks again.